in California, where we practice law, there is a temporary restraining order, which the threshold to getting that is very low. Every jurisdiction and every state has different threshold for what a restraining order is.
When I was going through it, it was confusing and scary at the same time.
Men tend to be fixers, right? They want to fix things. So it's like they get the restraining order, the sheriff serves them, and then immediately they want to call their spouse or the mother of their child if they're not married. Do not do that, because that's actually a violation of the restraining order.
What if you know that she's lying? You know that what's being put on that paper, it's all lies, and you guys have children. So for that 3 weeks, you have to stay away from your children?
Yes, there is a bias in the court system between the genders. There just is. If you are asking for no custody, the other parent won't get custody and won't even see their child and won't even speak to their child for that 3-week period.
All rise.
I just want to be able to see my daughter.
Like a real man to be.
So you're just living off his child support? We've gone over so many of these cases.
Order in the court.
Today we have Attorney Jafari with us, and she practices family law in the state of California. She has been advocating for children and families since 2003, so that's well over 20 years now. So we are truly honored to have her here today. And today we will be talking about TPO or TIO, as is referred here in Georgia, which is a restraining order in family court, and how it's weaponized against men primarily. And this is not to say that it's not used against the women, but in the majority of the time, it's used against men in divorce or custody. So today, we're here to get a better understanding of what that is. Attorney Jafari, thank you so much, and welcome to the Family Court Podcast.
Thank you so much, Mustafa. I'm happy to be here and shed some light on restraining orders.
Thank you. All right, so this is something that I have experienced myself, and when I was going through it, it was confusing and scary at the same time, just not knowing what it is and how to respond to it. And I get a lot of these questions on my platform, and sometimes, like I was saying earlier, it's hard to answer that question because the family law, it's different in every state and in every jurisdiction. So I wanted to start with this question, if I can. What is a temporary restraining order for those that don't know what it is?
So you're absolutely right, Mustafa. It's exactly what you said. Every jurisdiction and every state has different threshold for what a restraining order is. So in California, where we practice law, there is a temporary restraining order, which the threshold to getting that is very low. You do obviously have to have abuse. You do have to have could be financial abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, harassment, and things of that nature. And really, it's up to the judge if the judge wants to grant you that temporary restraining order. And that lasts for 3 weeks. So if you are asking for no custody, then the other parent won't get custody and won't even see their child and won't even speak to their child for that 3-week period. So the judge has a lot of discretion. If you're asking for a move-out order, the judge can sign that and say, yes, the other party has to move out, even though there isn't that much evidence, right? Because the other side hasn't really even had a chance to defend themselves. It's basically on one person's request for the restraining order.
Wow. So I did not know that financial abuse. So what construed as a financial abuse when it comes to? I understand that sometimes a judge may grant it just to be on the safe side. I get that, but when you say financial abuse, what do you mean about that exactly? I'm trying to understand that part of it.
Well, financial abuse is where one party has more control over the finances and is basically cutting off the other spouse from the finances. And so somebody can go to court and say, look, here is all the harassment, here are all the texts, here are all the emails, and they're financially abusing me by shutting off all my credit cards, shutting off the joint account, leaving me basically to, fend for myself. And now I'm like in the middle of bankruptcy pretty much, because they've cut off all the finances. We have many situations like that, both for men and for women, okay? Because we have now in 2024 a lot of women that also work, and we have husbands that are relying on that income, and so she also can cut off, the credit cards and empty or drain out the joint bank accounts. And so now he's like, I have no money. I can't even afford an attorney because everything's been cut off. So that's also another thing that courts look at, especially initially, because judges don't know, Mustafa. It's like somebody comes to court and they're saying, the other party's doing this, my spouse is doing this. Judges don't know. And so they want to be very cautious and err on the side of caution. That's why they'll say, okay, for 3 weeks, you stay in your corner, and he stays on his corner and she stays on her corner. And then in 3 weeks, we'll have a trial to see what's true, what's not true, what we can do here to minimize the drama and the chaos.
Okay. So what if you know that she's lying? You know that what's being put on that paper, it's all lies, and you guys have children involved in the mix. So for that 3 weeks, you have to stay away from your children?
Yes. Now, sometimes you can say that you are okay with giving custody, parenting rights to the other person, to the other parent for that 3-week period. So some judges say, look, okay, the abuse has been against you and not against the children. So we want to give the other party, which in your case, I know you talk a lot about your situation. We want to give the father some visitation in that 3-week period. So in that type of situation, we suggest that somebody like yourself would only see the children and pick up the children from the police station, because it actually protects you. Because if the other person is making these false allegations that you haven't had time to defend yourself against, then it would be to your benefit to actually go to the police station, pick up your children, see them, and bring them back to the police station for pickups and drop-offs.
Okay. And this thing with the false allegations, and this is what I keep saying, I experienced this myself, and I know so many people, especially on my private dads group. I have over 2,000 fathers that are in that group. So just about, I want to say about 80% of them have experienced some type of false allegations in family court, especially, knowing that they have children, So and it's used so much so that it has its own name, the silver bullet, which is designed to basically disable the other parent. In this case, again, is the father. So I have been served with this. I got it. So now how do I defend myself against it?
Well, for that 3-week period of time, there's not much you can do other than if you want to file a mutual restraining order, then you can do that, obviously. But let's say that you're not going to go that route and you're not going to file a restraining order. Really, in those 3 weeks, there's nothing that you can do, right? Because your hands are tied behind your back because the person, your spouse, has filed a restraining order, and now you need to stay away. And this is really key, because I know that your father's group, men tend to be fixers, right? They want to fix things. So it's like they get the restraining order, the sheriff serves them, and then immediately they want to call their spouse or the mother of their child, if they're not married, and say, oh my gosh, let's fix this. I will stay away, but I definitely want to see our child. Right. Do not do that, because that's actually a violation of the restraining order. So do not become a fixer. Do not call, email, no texting. Get an attorney, especially if you know that it's false allegations, because you're going to need your attorney to prove the things that this other person is saying are false. And let me give you an example of that. I just had a trial 2 weeks ago where the reverse happened. The father filed a false allegation restraining order on my client, which was the mother.
Mhm.
This was before I became her attorney, because these false allegations, they quickly file them, right?
Right.
And so it was very difficult, especially because he did not have an attorney. So the judge really was like almost siding with him, right? Was like, okay, well, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt because you don't have an attorney. It's not that he couldn't afford an attorney. He purposely did that to look like the victim.
Ah, wow.
And so I had to represent my client, and literally, Mustafa, it took weeks, those 3 weeks, for me to go step by step, line by line by line, to say the things that he was saying were not true. And he was using the custody. He was using the custody as and the restraining order as a weapon. And you know what the judge said, which was really good? The judge dismissed the restraining order.
Wow.
But the judge said, you are using this restraining order as a sword
Wow.
to gain custody, but the restraining order is supposed to be a shield for victims of violence.
Mhm.
So when the judge said that, I got so excited, because I said, oh my goodness, because we know that it's both genders, right? Both genders can play this dirty game. And so in this situation, it was the husband that was playing it. And the judge saw right through that. And the judge said, no, you are using this as a sword, and restraining orders are supposed to be a shield for really, domestic violence, where there has been physical violence, where there has been clear, financial abuse, harassment, slashing someone's tires, things of that nature. And I thought, oh my goodness, thank God that this judge got it right. But again, my client wasn't able to see her child, right? All that time. And so it's great when the system works, but I wish that judges were more careful in making sure that what the allegation is true, but they don't have the time to do that because the other party is usually not notified.
Mhm.
Right? So they're not in court, they can't defend themselves, and the threshold is very low.
Right.
The threshold for trial is preponderance of the evidence in California, which is 51%.
Wow.
So he had to prove, in this case, 51% that, yes, there was domestic violence. And he couldn't prove that because everything he was saying was false.
Yeah.
And so I didn't even have to put on my client after he testified and I was able to cross-examine him.
Mhm.
That's when I told the judge, Your Honor, it's very clear what, the petitioner in this case, or the plaintiff, has done and is using this restraining order for custody purposes. And we've already filed for divorce, because we quickly filed for divorce knowing this was the games that he was playing. And so my client hasn't seen her child in 3 weeks. And the judge was going like this, Mustafa, like, I agree. And that's when the judge gave his decision. And he said, you know what? You don't have to put on your client. I've already seen everything I need to see.
Okay. Now let me ask you this. Just since this is a men platform, okay, I'm gonna twist it just a little bit. But it's actually a good thing to see that judges are now picking on to this thing. But let me ask you. So if it was reversed, let's say if it was the woman that filed it, I'm sure you have been practicing for 21 years. You have seen this. So let's say the mother files against the father. Have you ever seen a judge reacted the same way that he reacted with the husband when he filed it against the wife?
So. Look, and I talk about this in my social media. There is a bias in the court system between the genders. There just is. Okay. Like for instance, how many husbands and fathers do you know that get child support or get
Just about all of them, just about all of them paying for child support.
correct?
But to get it's you see it's barely none, really.
Right. So the same can be true, obviously, for both, but it's look, we have to make the same arguments as we would for a father that we represent and a mother. But we have had situations, obviously, where we've represented the father, and the mother is lying, and the same is true. We've gotten the domestic violence restraining order dismissed, but that's because we're lawyers, right? We're supposed to be able to make the arguments and not put any emotion towards it. The problem is, Mustafa, a lot of people can't afford attorneys, right? And so they go to court and they're so emotional and they're like, if I could just convince the judge, that this didn't happen, and they're arguing on emotion, not logic, not the law, not rules of evidence. That's where they get themselves in trouble, because the judge is like, they don't care about the emotional aspect. And so they want to know, she's making an allegation, right? Where does this come from? They're not going to think she's lying.
Right.
That's a good thing you just said. Can you repeat what you just said? Like, the judge don't really care about your emotions. They all looking for evidence. Can you say that again, please? Because a lot of men, and I talk to this a lot on my platform, where when you're dealing with any type of family court related issue, you have to take your emotions out of it. Can you touch on that just a little bit more, please?
Yes. So even as lawyers, we have to stay very stoic. Okay. If you don't know what stoicism is, look at Tim Ferriss. He's got a lot of YouTube videos about stoicism. And basically what that is we have to keep all the emotions out of it. Okay. We have to be very stoic, like no emotional up and down, no, talking over her when she's testifying, making sure that you have all of your documentation. Sometimes if she's saying, he hit me, he can say, well, was there a police report? No, there was no police report. Well, if you were in fear, then why didn't you get a police report? Oh, I didn't want to get a police report. Well, but why? You were in fear, then that's your testimony, right? You were testifying under oath that you were in fear. So everybody knows, if you're in fear, you get a restraining order. And isn't it true that the following day you and I had relations with one another? See, now I'm putting doubt in the judge's mind that, wait a minute, she couldn't have been in fear. You know what I'm saying? So little by little, it's how you chip away at that situation. Sometimes, this alleged, physical violence happens, but the person never goes to the emergency room. And so you ask about that. Did you go to a 24-hour clinic? No, I didn't. Well, but you're testifying under oath. See, you emphasize that, right? That there was physical violence. So you didn't call the police and you didn't go to the ER. So, what was so little by little. But again, you cannot do that if you're not an attorney, because you don't even know the questions. And half the time you're sitting there like crying, right? And so the judge is like,
yeah, that's so true. Yeah, that's so true. When I was dealing with it, that was my fear. It's just, you don't know what to say. Even if you do know what to say, how are you supposed to say it in a way that is convincing to the judge that she's lying, And the thing that really saved me at the time, I was working a lot, and the job that I had then, I was traveling a lot. So the thing that helped me and the attorney that I had at the time was we started putting together the schedule, the date and the time that she used to allege that I was abusing her. So when we put all this stuff together, it just didn't match. So, but yeah, you're absolutely right. So from let's say once the judge granted a temporary restraining order. So you said that's 3 weeks in California. So if for example, God forbid, and the judge now makes it into a permanent, how many more? What's the time on that?
Okay, so at the time that there's trial, after those 3 weeks pass, there's a trial. And so at that point, you can have your attorney, you can have your documentation, your pictures, your travel itinerary, like you probably had, any videos, text messages, you know, if you had relations together, you know, after the abuse, you know, things of that nature. So you come to the trial, and that's where you get to question the other party, the other spouse. And so let's say you're unsuccessful, and the judge says, you know what? By 51%, which is not a lot, right? By the preponderance of the evidence, 51%, I'm going to grant the restraining order. It can be for 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, or 3 years maximum in family court in California. So for 3 years, I'm granting the permanent restraining order for 3 years. But when you have a child, they will also put a parenting plan together.
Okay.
So it's not like for 3 years you won't have access to your child. They're just going to make sure that, you know, you do the exchanges at a police station or like a public library or something like that. I always say, no, let's just do it at the police station because I want my client protected, right? I don't want any more, you know, false allegations and now contempt because now there's something else. So I'm like, no. You want a restraining order? We're going to do it at the police station where my client can record the interaction. And you know what's so interesting is these people that get these false allegations, these like narcissists, sociopaths, these mentally ill people that do this to ruin other people's lives, they don't usually want to meet at a police station.
Wow.
Because that's for them, they're losing control because they know, wait, I'm going to go to a police station now. And it's like, yeah, because you're in fear, right? And so the police are there to protect you, right? And so you can see that their story starts to fall apart because they're like, no, I don't want that.
It's funny you said that. That's exactly what happened in my case because I did request to meet at a police station and she refused. Even after it was dismissed, because I wanted to now start to protect myself. Like I record every interaction that I have with her, and the police station, it's literally where I want to meet, but she don't want to meet at the police station. It's funny that you say that. All right, so.
And let me just say this for people that are listening, your audience. I didn't even know that about Mustafa. I know his story, but I didn't know that little bit of that story about the police station. But you just see what happens is that the blueprint of these people that make these false allegations is the same. The stories are a little different, but you see, this is the blueprint. And I think, Mustafa, what you do is so great with these men groups is that you tell them the blueprint.
Right.
And you say, look, if she's starting to act crazy, you know, she's starting to, this is, you know, and you give them that blueprint. And so they can sort of connect the dots and say, yes, this is checking off. I need to protect myself. I need to leave the house or go live with a relative or friend. And so, you know, that's how people like yourself are helping these men. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Thank you for saying that. And I wanted to, because I get a lot of fathers that do this, and I just want to get it from an attorney perspective. When, God forbid, the restraining order have been now granted, like you say, 3 months, let's say 3 months, and that restraining order, it's now in effect, does it create some type of a criminal record? Well, I guess before you answer that, does it include the other parties, family, and close friends?
Okay, so it can, yes, it can include not usually their friends, unless you have contacted the friends, but it's usually just the other party. And if you live with your family, like let's say you live with your aunt and uncle, or you live with your mom and dad, it can include them as well. But generally it's just the two people. And you can ask that. You can say, okay, Your Honor, I haven't done anything to her friends. I haven't done anything to her mother and father. And so I don't want them included in the restraining order.
I see.
Okay.
So you have to ask
it, right?
Yes. If they're listed on there, you have to ask. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
All right.
So
does it create some type of a criminal record or a temporary criminal record?
Okay. So in California, it's quasi criminal. Okay. In the sense that no, a district attorney is not going to prosecute you. Okay. But it's quasi criminal in the sense that, and that's why that 90-day period is really important, because within 90 days, you need to have a hearing. Okay. You can decide between the two of you to continue that hearing, but then you waive that time, which is that 90-day, 3-month period. But it's quasi-criminal. It's not criminal necessarily, where a district attorney is going to prosecute you. But in the family court, it's a no-no, right? If you get a restraining order, you don't want to violate it, because the other spouse can come and say, file for contempt, and tell the court, well, you know what? Even in 3 weeks, this person didn't listen to your court order.
Wow.
And that's when the judge is going to say, okay, now I know that the spouse is not good, because when I gave a court order for no contact, they still contacted.
Right.
And so that's how the judge can gauge. So I tell my clients that get restraining orders before they hire me, do not, this is your 3-week period of your best behavior you've ever behaved in your entire life. Do not contact, call, text, email. Do not do it even a third party. Do not contact their boss, for instance. If you go to the same gym, do not go to the same gym. Just be very, very good this 3 weeks, because this is serious.
Right.
This is a serious offense. And so we don't want to give the other party any ammunition to say, oh, Your Honor, in the last 3 weeks, he still, is not paying attention to your, to the restraining order that you yourself gave me.
Right.
So when a police officer pull you over, can they see that you have a restraining order against the other person?
Yes. So in California, because it's quasi-criminal, it does go in the police stations in their records. So when they pull you over, yes, they can see that you have a restraining order.
Wow. Okay. So what are the consequences of a restraining order? Let's say civil and criminally, so the judge granted a restraining order. Somehow I violated a restraining order. What are the consequences again for civil and criminal?
So it is really only a civil matter in family court. It's not criminal. Okay. And so unless you get a criminal restraining order, which that's a different thing, and that's not within the family court, that's in the criminal court. Okay. For instance, let me give you an example of that. You could get a criminal restraining order, for instance, if your spouse has tried to kill you, and now you've filed your police reports. Okay, you've already done all of that. And now it becomes more of a criminal matter than a civil matter in family court. And then in that situation, the district attorney will prosecute on your behalf. But a lot of the cases don't fall under that bracket, right? A lot of it's just domestic abuse, physical domestic abuse. And so that's in the civil, which civil is same as family law, right? Within the family law court system. Okay. Now, let's say you get the restraining order, the permanent, right? Let's say in this situation, the wife gets it. If she gets the permanent and you as the husband, you do something, she can file for contempt. So she can file for contempt and then you could be sent to prison. So that's why it's quasi-criminal in the sense that, yes, you can be sent to prison, and then at that point, it's up to the district attorney if they want to charge you or if they just leave it to the family law court system.
With a family matter. Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. So, and I know this is actually, I was talking to one of the father on my group, it was the day before yesterday. And he said that while he was going through it, and this is actually crazy to hear it from a father, you know what I mean? So he said his attorney was actually trying to instruct him. Now, he's no longer with that attorney, but he was trying to instruct him to come up with these crazy allegations to, I guess, put on the other party, but being the man that he was. And to be honest with you, just him talking to me about it, it was very shocking. And I was so proud of him that he didn't go through with it. But he was saying that attorneys, sometimes they will instruct their client to come up with these things. I'm not saying that you do it, but have you seen it or have you heard that some attorneys do this just so that they can put the other party at a disadvantage? Yeah, they can amplify the small things, right? Yeah, because I was like, if an attorney is coming with this to a man, can you only imagine those that are actually representing the mother? And again, this is not to say that. Yeah, I mean, it was just crazy to hear. I hear the stories, but to actually hear it firsthand from someone that have experienced it, it was very shocking. And I truly believe that when it comes to family matters, a lot of these allegations or the silver bullet tactic, it's a systematic issue, So in every state that you go, it's usually, like you said earlier, it's usually the same story, constructed the same way, So, and which actually, brings me back to the point that I was trying to make. If judges know that people lie in court, why do they still grant it? It's just a little crazy that that she's not telling the truth, because you probably have seen this many times before. Have you ever had a situation where the judge just bluntly say, "No, I'm not going to grant this"?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yes, they will throw it out, and they'll say, that it's denied for those 3 weeks, but you still have to go back in 3 weeks, and if they have more evidence, they can present it at that time. Usually, though, if it's denied, they won't. They'll just drop it at that point.
I see. Okay. Right.
But no, we've had situations where it's been partially granted and partially denied. Well, where they'll grant the stay away from 100 yards of the person, and the judge is like, yeah, I just want them to stay away from each other. But then they'll deny the custody part. They'll say, no, I want the father to have visitation. So it's not that the judge knows. If the judge knows 100% that it's false, they'll deny it. Okay. But it's usually in that gray area, right? Where they're not sure. I will tell you, because we're in Los Angeles, after the O.J. Simpson case, judges were granting restraining orders left and right, with little evidence, because they were afraid, right? Because look at how many times Nicole Simpson had called the police. She even the last time said, you already know who I'm talking about, because I've called you, 9 times this week. There's a recording of her saying that.
Wow.
So just to let you know that, because we're in Los Angeles County, after O.J. Simpson trial, there was a lot of judges that were like, we don't want to risk it, where what if 1% of it is even true? We're going to grant the restraining order. So that was, that's, judges also don't want to, most judges, right? And I have friends that are judges. They're not there to harm. They're there to actually help. Now, does that mean that they're always perfect and make the right decision? No, because they're human. And I tell my client when we go for restraining orders, which is rare, look, I don't know how the judge is going to rule, right? I cannot guarantee that the judge makes the correct decision. And they're thinking, what are you talking about? They're supposed to make the right decision. And I say, well, they're human, okay? And it's very subjective. So just keep that in mind. I know you want the restraining order, but keep in mind that it doesn't always work out correctly.
That's true. Yeah, that is so true. Attorney Jafari, thank you so much. So I have one last question, because I don't want to keep you too long. We've been on for about 40 minutes now. So this last one, and I want to really emphasize this, because I've had a couple. See, every question I'm asking you, it's something that I've discussed with a member in my group, So, and then sometimes we can talk, but to hear it from an attorney is completely different, because you practice this thing on a daily basis and you see more than the average father, for example. Although I have my paralegal certificate, it's just not the same as an attorney. You know what I mean? So, let's say the restraining order have been granted, you have been staying away, but somehow you happen to violate it. And I know you mentioned this earlier, but I just want to again emphasize how important it is for you to stay away. So let's say you violated it and you have a custody that you're also battling with your ex-spouse. What are the consequences of violating the temporary order?
Yeah, it's not good. Okay, it's not good that you're violating the temporary restraining order. Basically, the other party can bring it, to the judge and make a contempt motion to show that you violated the restraining order. And it's not good. The judge will admonish you. They can sanction you, which is monetary sanctions, like in a certain amount of money. And they have the ability to say, you know what, you need to do some jail time, because you're not respecting. People don't realize a court order is like the highest order, right, from a judge. It's actually has the judge's signature and it's sealed. So you have to make sure that you're not violating the restraining order. I don't care if you have to like fly to a different state for 3 weeks. You know what I'm saying?
Just to be
Do
safe.
To be safe, right?
Just to be safe. I've told clients, go stay with someone else. Obviously, you have to stay with someone else if there's a move out order. Do not like block the person from your emails, your phones. Just make sure that you're not violating it, because you can be sanctioned by the court, which is, they could say pay $500, pay $1,000, right? And they have the ability to put you in jail. So that's why I say it's quasi criminal, because they're judges. They can do that, right? They can say, wait a minute, I told you and I ordered you not to contact, and you still did it. And so no wonder this person's afraid of you, right? And so that's where it gets really difficult. Our clients, I mean, I'm not saying they're perfect, but I have not had that situation in 21 years.
Wow.
Because I'm so like vigilant about it. And I even tell my clients, like with the custody thing, like I was telling you with my client from 2 weeks ago, I was like, like texting her, like, make sure, because sometimes, Mustafa, out of anger too, and you're trying to prove your innocence, you're like, maybe I should, and it's like, no, you cannot be doing that at all. And so it's vitally important that you respect the court's decision, even if you think it's wrong, that you respect the court's decision, because they're the authority now.
Right.
And they stand in between you and your child, or if you don't have a child, you and the resolution of your divorce. So even if you don't like the judge, you have to respect authority, just like you would with a police officer. You have to respect their authority. You might not agree with them, but you have to respect their authority.
Absolutely. This is why you got to take your emotions out of it whenever you're dealing with the family court. So, Attorney Jafari, thank you so much. Truly, thank you so much. Do you have any last words before we get out of here? I will make sure that I include your links, your social media pages, your contact information of anybody that's in California that's looking for an attorney. And, of course, I'm going to give them your information for consultations and so on. Any last word you want to add before we log off?
No, again, I just wanted to say that I think you're doing an amazing job, Mustafa, just giving information and educating your community, right? Your community of men with this information of the silver bullet, how it works, what the blueprint looks like. I think it's wonderful what you're doing. I mean, I know when I started practice 20 years ago, there wasn't social media, and it was like men were just blindly going through the system. Now there's so many resources, and we also will refer, our potential clients and our clients to listen to your family court podcast and really get into a men's group so that you can help them, because it's obviously different coming men to men than, me saying, do not contact her, meet her at the police station. And he's going, but I didn't do anything wrong. It's like, I believe you. That's why I accepted you as my client. So I give them that reassurance. I believe you. But in this period of time, we have to be very careful, knowing that if somebody says one false allegation, there's going to be 10 more behind it, right? So I make them very much aware of the situation. So I appreciate it. I do want to say one thing, just as a plug.
Yes, ma'am.
I am starting also a podcast called NARC, which is Narcissist Abuse Recovery Channel. And it's not exactly what you're doing, but it talks about really narcissism and how these types of people are so difficult in family court, and how to work within that system of these very high conflict individuals. So I hope to have you as a guest on my
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll be more than happy. It'll be my honor to be there. I mean, I don't know if you have a little more time. I would love to hear a little bit more about that, so I can share it with my group. I know a lot of fathers they deal with because when I was accused of these false allegations, I tell you, I was standing across from her. I couldn't believe that thing that she was saying about me. And it got to the point where my knee literally buckled. I couldn't believe it. And when I talk to other fathers, it's amazing how many of them have dealt with the exact same thing in family court. So I think your podcast, it's needed. It's needed. So if you have maybe 10 minutes or so to just talk a little bit more about that, so I can share that clip on my group.
Yes, actually, so we're launching in the summer, the end
Okay.
of summer. We have our media group that's doing it for us. I'm not media savvy like you are, and so it's going to be fantastic. I'm doing it with a friend of mine. You might know John from Male Victims of Female Narcissists. So he's going to be the male component, and he also works with a lot of men who not so much false allegations as for the domestic violence like you're speaking to, but just parental alienation, like real parental alienation. I'm not talking about manufactured, right, where somebody is like upset and they keep the kids. Like, no, like how certain types of people will alienate the child for many, many, many years, not to see their parent. And that there's no gender to that. We know that females do it. We know that males do it. And so we're going to be having dialogues like this and bringing guests on. Really, for us, it's going to be mental health professionals that can really talk about narcissism and what that looks like, and then helping. We never call them victims, we call them survivors, helping the survivor or the innocent spouse sort of working through that process in family court. Like, they're going to lie, they're going to do X, Y, and Z, but what do you do in response to that? Which, again, you stay stoic, you don't show emotions in court, and you just stick to the facts.
Right.
See, a long time ago, Mustafa, a judge told me, and I was in the chambers with the judge, which is where the judge sits. The judge said, "You know what?" He said, "Attorney Jafari, people lie, but documents don't lie. So bring me the documents." And I was like a new lawyer, so I was like, "Bring the documents." Okay. So now it's like, we bring tax returns. Now we know people lie on tax returns, but we bring tax returns. Like you said, we can bring the itinerary. My client wasn't even in the vicinity. How can he or she have done X, Y, and Z? So the narcissist abuse channel is really going to be focused on these, really mentally ill individuals, and how to deal with them in family court, how to heal from after you divorce them, and what the recovery looks like. Because, once you divorce a narcissist, you know what they do? They turn on the heat and they get worse.
That is true.
It's true.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You think you got rid of them and you're like, yes, I'm finally divorced. And it's like,
They're right
You're
behind
Right
you.
behind you.
you're back in court
Absolutely.
next week for something else. And we talk a lot about them because they really are damaging, and they damage their spouse, but they also damage their children. So, we're excited about the podcast. And yeah, I look forward to having you as a guest.
Absolutely. It will be my honor again. And I know a lot of people in my group that will enjoy that podcast. Attorney Jafari, I thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to talk to us today. You didn't give us your website. I know I'm going to include the link on my description box. Can you give us the website if you have a phone number that people can reach your office?
Yes. So the website is jafarilegal.com. And then the phone number is 310-880-4541. And so I know you will link all of that. We've got I do so many videos. I don't know if you've seen them, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. They've got me doing crazy skits on TikTok now. When we first started 20 years ago, it was, as an attorney, you would advertise in the yellow pages. Well, there's no more yellow pages, right? It's all this other social media. So, and I love it. Listen, if it speaks to one person, like what you're doing, then it's all worth it, right? And if we can help people on this really difficult journey, then it makes it all worth it for us. So I'm like you. I like to help people, and I don't represent the difficult narcissistic clients. I just refuse to represent them. I really represent the innocent spouses that have been dragged through, litigation and false allegations. So again, thank you so much for everything that you do as well.
Thank you.